Welcome to The Point. Got a very, very exciting subject this evening. We're going to be talking about the supernatural human body. The supernatural human body. Now, some people say, I wish I could have a miracle. Well, let me tell you, you are a miracle. You definitely are a miracle. We were all chosen by God before the foundation of the earth. And you remember right at the beginning, God said, let us make man in our own image. Male and female, he created them. And that was in Genesis 1. And Genesis 2, it says, the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. Does that sound supernatural to you? Well, let me tell you, it is. Let me tell you that you started life, your life on earth, that is, as a little tiny cell the size of a grain of salt. Tiny, 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 with your DNA from your mum and dad. We'll be talking about that a little later on. But in 9 months, you grow into a little baby, and now you grow into however big you are now. And that is a complete miracle. We are all absolute miracles. Now, in the Psalms, Psalm 139, is King David speaking in the Psalms. He said, I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Now, I'm going to just touch on the surface of just how fearfully and wonderfully made we all are. I'm going to take you through some of the human systems, but by no means all of them. There are a huge number of systems, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, which I won't be touching, all in the area of biochemistry and all the other things that go on in our cells. I'm just going to talk about the things that we're all familiar with, and they are quite supernatural enough for you to get the idea that you are truly a miracle. So let's, I've got some pictures to show you, and there's a human body. Now there's it's not a body like you normally see a human body, but we're all made of 100 trillion cells, roughly. And we are the most complex machine in the universe. It's absolutely fantastic. You see, we walk, we talk, we reproduce, we breathe, we think, we see, we hear, we do all sorts of things. A lot of it goes on without even thinking about it, because we have a supercomputer called our brain, which is controlling all of this. Our brain is only 3 pounds in weight, and yet uses 20% of the energy produced in our body, in all of our cells. All of our cells, what do? They produce energy using the Krebs cycle. I'll come on to that as well. We are amazing, fantastic, extraordinary machines made in the image of God. And there you see human body, probably some athlete of some sort, but the human body is just extraordinary. A typical adult man weighs about 11 stone, 70 kilograms maybe. It varies, of course, from country to country, but the thing is we can skip and dance and jump all over the place, and yet we're highly skilled, and we can do, and with our hands, we can do tiny little maneuvers and write, and yet we can pull ourselves up, the whole of our body, using just one hand. That body is just fantastic. So let's just see what the next picture is, and we'll just talk about each picture as they come. Right, there is a human cell. Now, I'd like you to come back to me now while we talk about the human cell. Now, obviously it varies, but roughly we have 100 trillion cells in our body. That's roughly. That is an awful lot of cells. 100 trillion cells. Now, each single one is different. Every single cell is different from another. Obviously, my eye cell and your eye cell is different from your heart cell and your lung cell and your skin cell, but each individual eye cell is different from each other. Within the eye, we have the rods and the cones at the back of the eye and the retina, and we have the optic nerve, and we have the cornea and the iris and the pupil, and all these other they're all different cells, and they're all composed to make up this one organ called the eye. Now, how is it that all of these different 100 trillion cells, all different, all come together to form one human body? Well, we have a genetic code. Now, let's see what's on the next picture. There's our DNA, very famous, our DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, the famous right-handed spiral in all of our cells. If you come back to me now, I'll just talk about DNA for a little while. This is the most complex genetic code in the universe, bar none. There is nothing as complex as DNA, absolutely nothing. There's a mathematical theory, not theory, it's a mathematical proof of these things. It's called switching theory. I won't go into the details of switching theory because it's in advanced mathematics and I'm not that clever, so I don't totally understand it. But using switching theory, you can prove that DNA could not possibly have happened by chance. DNA, let me just describe what it is. It's a genetic code made of 4 amino acids, thymine, leucine, guanine, cytosine, and it's a geometric code. Now, let me explain what I mean. You may be familiar with it on your mobile phone, your computer, your laptop, your tablet, whatever it is you have, that there are, on the actual hard disk are a whole lot of zeros and noughts. Zeros and ones, I meant to say. And that is basically how all that digital information is encoded. Well, DNA doesn't have that sort of code. It's a geometric code, which is completely different and unbelievably powerful. And I'll give you an example of how powerful it is. Now, I'm going to describe something which is impossible, but just to give you an idea. If you can imagine that that pen is a pin, and on the pinhead is a pinhead of DNA. Now, it's not possible to have a pinhead of DNA because DNA is so tiny. But if it were possible to have a pinhead of DNA, on that single pinhead of DNA, it would be possible, quite possible, to have all the genetic information for all the animals, plants, mammals, reptiles, birds, fish, and humans that have ever existed on planet Earth, all the books that have ever been written, all the scientific information that's ever been gathered, and all the thoughts of all humans ever since time began. And that would only just start to begin to use the storage of information of DNA. DNA is absolutely amazing, and it has a right-handed twist. Now, the evolutionists like to say that it all happened by chance in the primordial slime. Well, let me tell you, it's absolutely impossible for that to happen because DNA is right-handed. It is not possible for DNA to evolve in the primordial slime in a bucket, or anywhere else for that matter, because if it did evolve, it would be left and right-handed forms, an equal mixture of left and right-handed twists. It's called a racemic mixture. And how much use is a racemic mixture, in other words, a mixture of left and right-handed forms for DNA, for life? Answer, useless, because we need a right-handed form. So let's see what's on the next picture and we'll chat about that. Well, there's DNA spread out over 6 feet. Now, you remember your cells, you've got 100 trillion cells of them, and each one has DNA in it. And each one of those has about 30 billion codes on each strand of DNA. So if you come back to me now, each cell has about 30 different structural encoding information codes on each cell. For example, an eye cell. In order for your eye cell to be formed, God has encoded the DNA of your eye cell with 30 billion different designs to exactly make the eye cell right for your eye, and not anybody else's eye, for your eye. Okay, let's see what's on the next picture. Now, that is a brain cell. That's called a neuron. And those are called synapses, where different brain cells join each other. Now, if you come back to me now, each brain cell communicates with about 10,000 other brain cells. You remember our brain up there and our nervous system as well. We'll be talking about that in a minute. The messages travel electronically through the brain at 250 miles an hour. Unbelievably fast, and it's very, very complicated how it all works. It happens at the synaptic junctions. We know vaguely how it works. It's a bit of a mystery. We understand some of it. But it is absolutely extraordinary that we have processing information in our brain, which is the most complex organ, the most complex computer in the universe. Let's look at the next picture. Now, there's a skeleton. We're all very familiar with a skeleton, but let me tell you, that is the most extraordinarily complicated skeleton. First of all, we have movement. Your body can move around. You have protection. Your skull, for example, protects your brain, your very complicated computer. Your thoracic cage, your ribs, protects your vital organs. That's your heart, lungs, liver, spleen, kidneys. And this leverage. Let me talk a little about leverage. Now, you can see that body has, if you just go back to the body just for a second, you can see that the body's got two arms. The left arm is raised, the right arm is just hanging down. Now, that right arm, as you know, you can lift your right arm up, and you can also suspend your whole body weight just using your one arm. Now, if you asked an engineer to arrange something as complicated as that for the right arm to raise itself, he would have to make some sort of tackle, a pyramid of tackle apparatus to raise that right arm. But God has done it perfectly through tendons and muscles and everything else. And let me tell you, it is just absolutely fantastic. Let's see what's on the next picture now. Now, there we have our musculoskeletal system. There are 600 muscles in our body. And you're familiar with muscles. Just come back to me now. Now, in order for you to sit, walk, talk, think, what happens in all of our muscles, 600 of them, is that there's energy produced in order for the muscle fibers to contract and relax hundreds of times a second. What is actually happening is energy is produced within the mitochondria of each individual cell, so that low energy adenosine diphosphate, commonly known as ADP, is made into ATP, high energy, so that what happens when your muscle contracts is that energy is released and the muscle contracts and then relaxes again. And the whole purpose of the Krebs cycle is to produce energy in the cell for the muscle to contract. Now, we take that all for granted, but look, here's my hand raising very slowly. What's actually happening is thousands and thousands and thousands, probably millions actually, of muscle fibers that are contracting and contracting there and relaxing there as I raise my arm. It is totally, absolutely, mind-blowingly supernatural. Let's look at the next one. Now, that's your circulatory system. You're familiar with your heart and your arteries and your veins and everything else. If you come back to me now, you've got 60,000 miles of arteries, arterioles, capillaries, and veins in your body. 60,000 miles. And you've got 10 pints of blood. And each blood cell goes around the body once every minute. It's a very, very complicated pump, your heart, with 4 valves in it. And the purpose of the heart is to pump blood through the lungs so it gets oxygenated, and to release carbon dioxide in the lungs, and then to pump this oxygenated blood around the body. Because remember that your brain uses all this energy and must have sugar and oxygen. If it is deprived of either sugar or oxygen for 4 seconds, you are dead. It's as simple as that. First of all, you're unconscious, and then within a minute or two, you're dead. Within 4 seconds, if you deprive your brain of oxygen or sugar, you are unconscious, and very soon after that, you're dead. So this, we all literally exist literally from heartbeat to heartbeat. People's heartbeat varies. It's usually around about 70. Mine's actually quite slow. It's probably because I go to the gym every day. Some people are much faster. It varies, but roughly about 70 beats a minute, that sort of thing. Let's look at the next one now. Right, now there is that is your nervous system with that extraordinary brain right at the top, which I've mentioned already is the most fantastic supercomputer in the universe. It's far more complicated than thousands and thousands of NASA supercomputers. And it sends all those messages to and from the rest of the body through all those 60,000 miles of nerves at 250 miles an hour. So if you come back to me now, it all happens so quickly that, for example, if I were to put my hand on a hot plate or a hot iron or something, my hand is removed even before I think about it. It doesn't hurt until after I've removed it, because that's how your brain is wired up to the rest of your body. Let's look at the next one. Now, that is your skin, and that's the largest organ in the body. I'm just going to read out, because it's quite interesting, what is actually in 1 centimetre of skin. There's 4 yards of nerve fibres, 600 pain sensors, 1,300 nerve cells, 9,000 nerve endings, 36 heat sensors, 75 pressure sensors, 100 sweat glands, 3 million cells, and 3 yards of blood vessels. So if you come back to me now, I think you get the idea now that your skin, it may look very ordinary, but actually it isn't. Another thing about the skin is it is self-sterilizing. It has on it a special antiseptic solution on it. Otherwise, when you woke up in the morning, you'd be covered in green fungus. Literally, you'd be covered in green fungus every morning if we didn't have a special material on our skin which sterilizes our skin continually. Same as our eyelids produce, the tears actually sterilize our eyes all the time. Let's see what's on the next picture. Right, now our immune system is absolutely extraordinary. Quite complicated, the immune system. So if you just come back to me now, we actually live in a very toxic environment. Even though I'm in a very lovely studio now, the air around me, everywhere where we are, even where you are, is full of bacteria and viruses and fungi and all sorts of other horrible pathogens. And for the most part, they don't really affect us because our immune system keeps us perfectly safe. Let's see what's on the next picture. Right, that's our digestive system, which is absolutely extraordinary. You can see there that there's a mouth and a throat and an esophagus. That's the tube that connects the mouth to the stomach. The stomach, you can see there, it can contain up to about 1.5 litres of fluid or food, whichever. And then there's the small intestine and the large intestine. So if you come back to me, I'll try and explain to you what actually happens in your stomach. Well, the first thing that happens is that the food is sterilized. As the food goes into your mouth, your saliva, you produce 1.5 litres of saliva every day. Your saliva sterilizes the food, and it sterilizes even more when it gets to your stomach. Let me tell you about your stomach. It is absolutely extraordinary. The acidity in your stomach is the same as a car battery. It's pH 2. Your body pH is around about 7. In other words, it's normal, neutral. But the acid in your stomach is very, very acidic. So acidic that if you swallowed a fly, I used to do a lot of running, and I used to quite regularly swallow flies, but I never worried about it. Flies, by the way, are nasty things. You catch nasty bugs from flies, but you've probably never caught any nasty bugs from swallowing a fly, and I certainly haven't. And I'll tell you why, because the fly arrives in your stomach and immediately finds itself in a very hostile environment with very high acidity of pH 2, which immediately sterilizes it. But let me tell you how the food actually gets from your mouth to your stomach. Well, it goes down the esophagus, and in the esophagus are lots of little smooth muscles, and what they do is they contract and relax. They do what's called peristalsis. It's a contraction and a relaxation so that a bolus, a lump of food, is propelled down the esophagus. Now, you can actually eat food or drink a cup of coffee standing upside down. And that is actually quite extraordinary, but you can. Your whole body is absolutely amazing. Let's have a look at the next picture. Right, well, there's the respiratory system. You can see the lungs there. The lungs there are about the size of a tennis court. And you can see the mouth there, and the air comes in through the mouth into the trachea and into the lungs. So if you come back to, before you could leave that picture, on the right, you can see the little air sacs. They're called alveoli. And in the alveoli, air is, oxygen is transported from the alveoli into the capillaries, of the blood system to take oxygen to the rest of the body. So if you come back to me now, I want to tell you that your respiratory system is totally, absolutely, amazingly supernatural. It really is. Now, I did show you the little air sacs called alveoli, just there on the right-hand side, little air sacs. Well, there are millions and millions of air sacs. I told you the whole of the lung is about the size of a tennis court. Now, those little alveoli, like a sponge, if you like, they would collapse if God hadn't put God's fairy liquid in each one of them. It's called a surfactant. It's very similar to a detergent, and it prevents your alveoli collapsing. So if you think this all happened by chance, please think again, because there's no way that could have happened by chance. God knew perfectly well that we needed a surfactant in our alveoli in our lungs in order to prevent our lungs collapsing all the time. Next one, please. Well, there's your liver, which is absolutely astounding. It's the chemical, it's the central chemical processing plant of your body. And there are literally thousands of different biochemical reactions that go on in your liver. It's basically where all your blood is processed and all your body fluids are processed there. It is most extraordinary. I could spend a whole hour just talking about the liver. Next one, please. Let's see what's next. There are your kidneys. And your kidneys basically filter your blood and take out all the impurities into your urine, which is, by the way, sterile. And again, it is absolutely stunningly well organized within the anatomy of the kidney, how well it's done. Next one, please. Now, the next thing about us, or the last thing about us I'm going to talk about right now, is that we reproduce. Male and female, we reproduce. So if you come back to me now, what I've been trying to show you is just just a few of the bodily systems that you're familiar with, just a few of them. Actually, there are much more. For example, you have a particular blood sugar, which has to be maintained with a very, very narrow range. If it's too high, you are diabetic. If it's too low, you have hypoglycemia, and you become unconscious. But that is just one of literally thousands of different biochemical parameters that are maintained all the time in your body through homeostasis, which is a very, very important thing. In all of your cells, you're producing energy all the time in the Krebs cycle, which is one of the most complex chemical equations, reactions in the universe. It's unbelievably complex, and that's how we produce energy by metabolizing oxygen and sugar. But we've only got 2 minutes left, and what I wanted to emphasize to you is that all of this is what's called irreducibly complex. And I'll try and explain that to you. For example, your brain, this highly sophisticated computer kept in your skull to keep it safe. It uses 20% of the energy produced by your body. It needs all the time sugar and oxygen. It needs lots more besides. Therefore, for your brain to survive from second to second to second to second, it needs an active circulatory system, which implies 60,000 miles of capillaries and arteries and veins. It also needs a respiratory system, which is 2 tennis courts full of alveoli with surfactant in them, and it needs a whole lot more. All of this is irreducibly complex. You cannot have a walking, thinking, talking, reproducing human body unless every single parameter is completely working 100% from the word go. It cannot happen by chance. It is impossible for it to happen by chance. It says in Genesis 2, it said, the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground. That's 66 chemicals of which we're made, 66 elements of which we're made, and breathed into him the spirit of life, and man became a living being. We are truly supernatural, made in the image of God. We walk, talk, think, and it says in the scriptures, we we live in him. We live and move and walk in him. In him was life. In Jesus Christ was life. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. All things were created by him. Nothing was made without him. In him was life. Where did life come from? Life came from Jesus Christ. It is all totally, absolutely mind-blowing, fantastically, amazingly supernatural. So that's your human body for you. If you want to contact me, write to email address tothepoint@revelationtv.com. That's tothepoint@revelationtv.com. Thank you so much for joining me on this program. We look forward to seeing you again next week, same time. God bless you.